Okay, moving on to a letter to the Squally Valley News. Somebody wrote into the editor, and I think it's good to bring this up because this is a lot of the way current RSV members are thinking.
Right.
It's quite cynical, but I'll read you the whole letter and see what you think. Glen, if you did not believe in the school or Ramtha, then why did you work there? Why did you assume a position of influence and power in the school? And why did you pretend and mislead people all that time? Why didn't you leave on your own? You're a storyteller, but not a liar. Your words. You made up stories about Jay-Z, but you're not a liar. Jay-Z knows that when you say that someone should get up a tree and shoot her, my comment here, Glen, you did not say that, that's for sure. You were warning about the possibility that somebody could do that. Anyway, that you're kidding because you're a storyteller, not a liar.
Well, she was paying me to do a job, and I was still doing that job at the end. I was going in once a week and testing the water system, the sprinkler system. And so I did not leave on my own because I was still doing a job for her, and I was making money and a living. So there was no reason to quit. But when I would tell people, make up a story for somebody because I thought they were in dire straits, I thought that they were suicidal, I thought that their life was so bleak and so dismal that they were beyond, nothing could help them. So I would tell them a story about Ramtha saying they were a great master or something, and they would change and turn around at that point because I had empathy for them, for the way they were feeling and how sad and screwed up their life was because Ramtha never acknowledged them. So yeah, you could say I made those up. I did lie, and I feel bad about it now. But as far as everything else, I didn't lie about that. I can't remember parts of that question. If you go back and see what I've missed.
Why did you assume a position of influence and power in the school?
Well, I didn't. It was given to me. I didn't assume it, and I didn't think it was a question of power and influence. If the students thought that I was powerful and influenced things, that was their idea, not mine. I had no influence and no power. I would do things that Ramtha asked me to do, and there was other people that did things Ramtha asked them to do. So setting up the candles and different things. I didn't ever consider myself powerful or above anybody else at that school.
Perhaps you can clarify. Just like most of us, we get into this, we don't really know what we're getting ourselves into.
Right.
And I think if, obviously, hindsight, when you first started working there, and then eventually when you actually finished working there was a whole different perspective of what you were really involved in.
Right.
Did that perspective also, did the Cialdini's behaviour, Ramtha's so-called behaviour, change, get more and more, if you like, destructive, or was it always destructive and you didn't see it?
I think it was always the same, and I didn't see it until I got close to her, got that job. And if you look back at how many people have worked with her, been in the house, have been close to them, and how many are gone, they saw the same things. I've known several people I could talk about, but I don't want to say their names because they're living lives, and some of them are still in the community, and they know things that they could probably tell the same stories I'm telling in different ways, about what they saw, but they're afraid they're not going to do it.
What's the difference between you and a lot of people that have been involved with Jay-Z Knight personally, that they are, keeping quiet about a lot of information? What is the difference between you? What is it that
Well, I have what I hope is that I can help people make a decision. There's people that are on the fence out there. They don't know whether they want to go or they want to get out, or they don't know what's going to happen, and I'm hoping that some of my stories will help them get out or not go in. It's pretty simple. I care about people, and I do a lot of work with a lot of people in the community, and this is just another part of our community.
Right.
I'm doing the work helping. I hope I'm helping. If I'm not, I'm just sitting here flapping my gums.
I remember a question, I may come up to it in a moment. Somebody asked about the underground UGs, the bunkers and so on that were being built. Were you ever involved in...
I built several of them,
Built
yeah.
several, and what was your feeling of being involved in it at that time?
I thought it was really stupid for these people to put so much stock in a theory. I mean, we went through that in the 50s. Everybody built bomb shelters because Russia was going to nuke everybody. So these people were building, I mean, they were calling them root cellars and everything else, and you'd build a square box 20 by 20 or 12 by 12 that they were going to live in for months. It wasn't going to happen. It never would happen. And they would be blooming idiots by the time they got out of there, being in a dark hole all that time. But I did it because they wanted it done.
Yeah. Do you think Jay-Z Knight has built one of these things, or she sees?
Well, we had 3 times we planned them, and 3 times she would cancel. So we never did build. I never did build one for her. But that's when Joe was with her, and he was all gung ho on what Ramtha said, and I think she would kind of go along with that. And then about, I'd have everything organized, and we were going to put one even under the arena one time. And she called me up about 3 days ahead, and she said, forget it. And I went, okay, canceled everything, got it all done. That happened about 3 times. We're going to put them in the one in the woods and different places. But
you don't know of anything that happened.
I don't know whether she ever put one in or not. I'm sure one of her, either James or Joe has one somewhere.
I'll ask James.
Yeah, not James. What?
I'll ask James.
Yeah, ask him.
Somebody's asking, do you know anything about if Jay-Z was spying on RSC members using cameras?
Oh, yeah, she had a telescope up in her bedroom where she would watch them and do their field work.
And no electronic surveillance that you know of?
Not that I know of. I never saw. We scanned her house and cars and property for people that might have been doing electronic surveillance on her and couldn't find anything.
There's a question here by Wake Up Call. We're back to the drinking the Kool-Aid, but I'm just going to cover the question in case you've got any other thoughts. The question is, ask Glen follow up about drinking the Kool-Aid. It was clearly a metaphor for doing whatever crazy ass things Jay-Z tells these people to do. Do you ask Glen about the reference to seawater, C11 water in Prozac? What's your thoughts on the Prozac and the
that
C11?
Was, I don't know, probably somebody put the idea in her mind, but that was after I left, and I only heard about it from people that did it, and I don't know exactly where it came from or why, other than it's supposed to open your mind up. There was lots of things that were supposed to do that. Pretty sure it just closed them down. But I knew when I'd get to her.
What were we doing on the field without cards? I can't remember that.
Oh, that was when you first were throwing your knowingness out there and following it, And it was just, we were in the back paddock out there, and it was before, the one beyond the tank paddock. And it was just huge out there, and it was just to get people to release their fear of walking around blindfolded.
Oh, that's how.
So and that was the first start of it. People were just it was pretty interesting, and there was some really funny people that tread along there with their hands out, very cautiously in case they did come to a fence. They weren't going to smack into it very hard.
Did you ever say anything to some of those characters that were really spiteful on the field? I knew some people there, and I took my blinders off to look at them, and there were people there that didn't give a damn about who they knocked down, man, woman, child, anybody. Did you ever see that, and did you ever trouble you on that?
No, I did not see anybody that was vicious about it. They were still pretty sedate. It was during that time when all that started, and they started running across the field at each other and stuff. And that was really creepy. That was not a
the end
good
of your
thing.
time, wasn't it? There.
Yeah, it was shortly thereafter. There was people. There was one woman that it was when we started the Gulf War. We were, they were having all kinds of trouble over in the Middle East, and this one woman, she heard Fort Lewis drop a few bombs or howitzers or whatever was up there, and she started screaming, "Oh, they're killing babies! They're killing babies! They're killing babies!" And she just dropped down on the ground. And I said, "You got to quit doing this." I said, "Please stop this. You're really upsetting a lot of people." And she said, "They're killing babies," and she's just screaming, and it was just awful. And finally, Eugenie got her up there and took her around, and got her away from the rest of the crowd, because it was stopping everything. She was, and then another one time she dropped down, and she says, "I'm not going anywhere." And I said, "Ramtha wants you to go out to the paddock and practice." "I am not doing it. If you want me out there, you'll have to carry me," And so, one of the other guards, he goes, "Well, I'll help you carry her." And I said, "Oh, no, you won't." So I used to be a fireman, and I picked her up the fireman's carry, throw her over your shoulder, reach around, grab her arm, and hold her arm this way so she doesn't come off your shoulder. You got a leg in here, and you're holding her arm. And their stomach, this part is right in my shoulder, and I bounced her all the way down there, and she went, "Ugh, ugh, ugh," the whole way. And so I laid her down, and I said, "Okay, here you are, and if you don't get up, you're going to get stomped on." And she finally got up and started doing her stuff, but she was such a drama queen. She was going to, whatever, I don't know what she was going to do, but she could barely breathe by the time I got her there, and Jeannie went, "Where'd you learn that?" And I said, "I used to be a firefighter." And she goes, "That was beautiful." Taught her a lesson. It was just awful, but some of those people needed a little wake-up call, so. Those are the ones, see, I don't feel bad about that, but I feel bad telling these people that Ramtha smiled on them, so, But there was a lot of, we had to go downtown one time to get a tree hugger. She went down to Tumwater Falls Park, grabbed a tree, wouldn't leave, and we had to go get her. They called up the officer and said we got one of your people out here. And she says, "Well, how do you know it's one of ours?" And she said, "Well, because she's hugging a tree and won't let go, and says she's got to talk to Ramtha." So I looked at Jeannie. She went to Tumwater and got this woman, brought her back out, and dropped her off at her house. She never got to talk to Ramtha at all. So there was a lot of incidents like that. And then one time the sheriff, he had a guy that was he's passed away since then, but he was walking down the road and doing C&E, and Sheriff Edwards called up Jeannie, and he goes, "I got a guy out here hissing like a snake." He says, "We don't know what to do with him." so we went and got him and took him home too. He wouldn't talk to him, he wouldn't do anything. He just kept doing C&E, and he says, "This guy's hissing like a snake. We don't know what to do with him." So there was a lot of incidents like that where we helped out the people. It was fun. Hissing like a snake.
A few was sent home in straitjackets.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah.
It's a fine line.
Yeah, it is. And then, there's people that Ramtha told them the aliens can't get them if they keep moving. So they would just too many stories like that of people that took it way beyond what they probably should have.
I would like to ask Glen, what has the local community's reactions been since the video? Is your job as a contractor taking a hit? How's that all going? I know we covered that at the beginning, but you're doing well on.
Yeah, doing well, and every contractor in the state right now is hurting because the economy is so bad. But I'm still working. I do jobs for people, and I exist.
Did you ever see anyone or anything ever that even remotely was an anomalous experience, or paranormal, peculiar, or ever personally attribute to being unexplainable, or noteworthy regarding the many methods, truths, disciplines, or resulting from anything that people paid money to learn, master, or expectantly learn at RSC? That was a question from an EMF reader.
Well, I told a story about looking through the ceiling, and in my life, I've seen UFOs. I found Bigfoot's footprint out in the woods once. I've had psychic things happen to me that absolutely beyond explanation. Um, just lots of little things in my life, and so when I looked through the ceiling that night, and I'm just gazing up there and kind of half daydreaming, and see a cloud up there, and go. We leave 10 minutes later, and the clouds just moved a little bit over there. I said, "Wow, I saw through the ceiling." Well, then 3 days later, of course, Ramtha took credit for that, but that night he didn't. Oh, that's wonderful, Master. That was all that was said to me, So we walked up the house, and it was gone. So I think she thought about, wow, the fact that here's something I can use to make these people think that they can live in their undergrounds and not be depressed.
Yeah, not be locked in. They could see outside.
But I never gave credit to Ramtha for me doing that, and Ramtha didn't take credit for him doing that night, and it wasn't until days later that he took credit for that. And I kind of was surprised, Then and I heard later on that it's still told that happened, and he can make that happen for them, or they can do it themselves. And just one of those freak things that I did.
Well, it's typical of a personal experience, be it spiritual, metaphysical, that Jay-Z Knight will take and use for mileage for her program, and to back up, what she says is creating that in her presentations.
Exactly.
Are there any questions that so far haven't been covered that you would like to be asked?
I can't think of any now.
So feel free during the evening, you can, anything comes to mind, just this is the hot seat kind of thing. Okay, does Glen know of celebrated individuals originally associated with the school, or have been, were, or are now aware of anything that caused their support, attendance, or advocacy to be withdrawn? Examples: Richard Chamberlain, Shirley MacLaine, Linda E., many others.
Robert Mandan. Here's a story I know about Robert Mandan. He was from Three's Company. No, Three's a Crowd. He was a character actor, did a lot of stuff. He was on soap. He played Chester, the father. He bought a horse from Jay-Z. Came up and went to a couple events. I was at a poolside event with him, and he bought a horse. A championship Arabian. Well, when it got to L.A., his vet was there, and they sent it right back. Said, this is not a horse that I was told that it was, So he never came back. Shirley would come way early. She would come there, and Jay-Z would never talk to her. Shirley would walk around the grounds, look at the horses, and talk to the staff out there, and be almost completely ignored by Jay-Z. And then she just went away and started her own little thing, as you know. So she got treated like dirt.
Glen, we mentioned my old buddy Ernie Kanzler.
Yeah.
That I remember moved back south, pretty much penniless. Can you tell us what happened with the horse show, the whole situation where the government stepped in, I believe, and called Jay-Z Knight to account to pay that money back? Can you fulfill?
The way I understood it was a Federal Trade Commission. And after I was out, Ernie chased me down in the grocery store parking lot in Yelm one time, and he wanted to know if I could get to Jay-Z. He needed to see her. And I told him no, and he said, well, what about Jeannie? And I said, well, Jeannie doesn't work there anymore either. And so then he proceeded to tell me the story that he had spent $650,000 for Ramtha's stallion that had reincarnated all the way up through the generations to be here.
Can I just interrupt?
Yes.
Did you say $650,000?
$650,000 he paid for that horse.
Okay.
And as my wife put it, it was pretty much hamburger. So it was not a champion horse. So, and I guess I can quote her, but she doesn't like me doing that, but that's the way it was put to me about this horse.
What do you think its value was, its true market value was?
I have no idea. Jeannie said not worth anything. Was not worth anything. It's one of those
But it was Ramtha's horse, so it was worth something as Ramtha's horse.
To Ernie, it was.
Yeah, right.
It seemed to be worth that. But he was told by Jeff that it would be a world champion, which it wasn't. So when it came time for her to pay that back, which she paid back quite a few people back to stay out of jail, the Federal Trade Commission, the way I understood it, told her that she better start paying it back or she would go. So she did. She started sending checks to people. Well, Ernie told her, he says, why don't you just keep the money, pay back other people, and when I need it someday, I'll come and see you. And he told me this story in the parking lot. And he said, I said, well, why do you need to get in there so bad? And he said, well, about 3 days ago, he says, I was at an event, and he says, I asked Joe if I could see Jay-Z and talk to her about getting paid back for my horse. And he said 3 days later, 2 days later, he gets a letter in the mail that is a restraining order, and they've asked him never to come back on the property again. And he was desperate, and he had nothing left, and he wanted to continue his life.
He was to me, and I knew he was a very kind man, very
nice, yeah.
Wouldn't hurt a fly. So there's absolutely no truth in any kind of hassle that he might have been hassling.
I would not think him to be a liar at all.
No.
You know? And maybe that's his story, which people from the school will say, well, that's just Ernie's story, like this is my story.
Right.
But it's right from Ernie. And as far as I know, he never did get his money out of her.
No, he was pretty broke when I met him and went back south.
Yeah, and that's just not right. Right.
When I was building underground bunkers in the early 90s, I should say almost without most of what I built was probably collapsed now.
Right.
And now I hear it's to be in concrete and rebar and so forth.
Right.
Did you hear of any stories of accidents or people getting hurt or even going missing?
I didn't hear of anybody being hurt in him or missing, but I heard that the fire department, there was a fire in one, and the fire department had a truck that went into one of them, sunk in, and so they wouldn't go for. I mean, if it was an underground, they weren't gonna fight them. They were too afraid that they may collapse and somebody would be hurt. Okay,
here's a question from our old buddy, Old One. First, thank you, Glenn, again for the videos. You have made a big impact. Do you think Jenny would be interested to do a video also?
No, she will not. She's fighting cancer right now, so her life's going a different direction, and she's having a hard time. So I wouldn't even ask her to do that. And she respected Jay-Z Knight's ability to make money more than anything. So she said she wouldn't do anything to her.
Question about J.O. How did you get along with him? Did you ever surprise him doing something he would not want you to see?
I got along great with him. I know there was several times where he couldn't go to events because he had traumas that left him tearful, and he never would explain to me why and what it was that he had heard or talked with Jay-Z, but he wasn't. I know it shook his belief in Ramtha. And then he probably just changed and knew that he would be able to survive a little bit longer by playing the game like I did, keeping my job. And I have incidents that I have an incident about him, but I don't want to say it because it just wouldn't do any good. It wouldn't help anybody for me to tell my story about J.O. But just the fact that I know he is not the inspiration or the what was he made? He was made an example of how to live. You don't want to live like J.O. And it's okay.
All right, we're just about to wrap it up. I've got just one more question. When I knew you as the bodyguard, and we all held you so high because if you're with Ramtha and you're a bodyguard and you're somebody so special, at that time there would have been an inner circle group. Some of them are still there. Gorola, it's one of them. Gary Craig, I believe that's his full name. With those people, you got to probably know them quite personally as friends, maybe.
Yes.
Is there anybody, any of those people that you still see around town that you know that are now out of that situation? How do they view that you step forward and spoken out about this information?
Most of those people there will just say hi to me and will not say anything else. When I wanted to get NASCAR to come into town, I had 75 letters that I still have from schools, students, that told me I was screwing with their town and messing things up and was despicable what I wanted to do to bring NASCAR
RSE
in.
members?
RSE members, yeah, all of them. And people that were very, very good friends of mine, you know, for a long time. And they berated me worse than this because of me wanting to bring an industry to our town that would put us on the map and provide temporary jobs and part-time jobs for hundreds of people. And the only reason that it didn't work out was because we put out a map of having a road come up way up behind, along Fort Lewis, behind her property. Well, we made the map wrong, and it showed going through her property, so she told all of her students we were trying to shut down her school and put that NASCAR track in there. So that's what it was about. And it's too bad, because that would have been well, it wasn't them that stopped it, it was the state. The state wasn't going to put any money into getting a highway out here to have people come here. So, and they've been fighting ever since to find a better place to put it. So
it gets quite confusing in town because you get a lot of so-called scientific information about a situation, like the cell phones.
Right.
And I do quite a bit of research online about cell phones and stuff, and then you start seeing stuff. Well, wait a minute, this is totally overblown here. And it's used as a controlling mechanism to control a group. But what was so bad about the NASCAR? My thought would have been the noise and the traffic and stuff. But what was?
Well, if you've ever been to a NASCAR track, they have high walls and stuff. The noise goes up. It very seldom goes more than 500 yards beyond the track. And I've been near the track in Las Vegas, and you can hardly hear a thing. It's a slight buzz. So it was I absolutely don't know, other than that she thought, again, maybe it's one to galvanize the group against a common enemy, so they've got something cohesive that makes them feel good about themselves to fight. It would have been a boon to our town. It would have been great. But like I said, we met with several of the senators and people at the state, and the state would not kick in the $70 million it took to widen our highway and bring it out here. So it had nothing to do with any RSE students. They didn't do a thing. They did not stop it. They take credit for it, but it wasn't them. It was NASCAR.
All right, just one more question. Do you think you have a right to speak out and tell your story about RSE? Because you're old. Somebody accused you of being old, by the way.
Yeah. Why?
So maybe, do you think you should be able to speak out because you're old? I mean, are you old, Glenn, or what's the story there?
Well, I'm 61 years old. I don't know whether that's old or not. I still have most of my facilities. I can feed myself. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. I mean,
used to mean that you had some wisdom under your belt, didn't it?
Maybe I do have wisdom. Okay, it's not that I'm senile.
No.
The senility hasn't set in. I would like to, and not only that, but I've read a lot about religions and spirituality and all things in life, and if these people would start listening to their own souls and hearts and heads, they might feel a lot better about themselves to get away from there and start doing their own thinking and their own gathering of knowledge and spirituality. So you don't have to pay thousands of dollars a year to do that. You don't have to have somebody teaching you what they know, not what you know. But a lot of people think that they're gaining great knowledge from that, so it's okay.
And I keep saying this is the last question, but I do have one more. My feeling is Jayzie Knight will watch this. If Jayzie Knight was sitting there right in front of you, what would you say to her?
She would get up and walk out of the room. She would there's nothing I can say to her.
But she's
She'll
probably
watch
in
it,
her
yeah.
living room and
Yeah.
it's covered up. But what would you
Yeah.
say?
Well,
Have you anything to say to her?
I like Jay-Z, you know, and I was never in love with her. I've heard that I was disgruntled because I could never sleep with her. I was never in love with her. Never wanted to sleep with her. I respected her for what she did for a long time, until it started getting to that point where it was kind of creepy. And then she has an ability to make money beyond almost anybody's imagination and dreams, and that's what it's all about. It's not about, it might be now to a PowerPoint, a thing where she has power over that many people, but the main thing is money. It's nice to have.
Business, where you said that in the very first get-go.
Right.
It's a business.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
to make money.
And Jay-Z, you know, I feel sorry for you, like I said before, because you're stuck in that place, and your life is what you've made it. You know, talk about somebody that has made, you know, gets up every morning and looks at the secret and manifests her reality. Look what she's done.
If she was to call you one day and say you want to sit down and have a cup of coffee, what would you say?
I would be glad to. You know, it'd have to be somewhere public. Well, I don't know, Jay-Z. If you watch this, that's a joke.
I don't know if this will remain on tape, but when I started, you pay your money, get banded, and then you walk through the door and you calmly find a spot.
Right.
Well, what was most shocking to me, first few events, was I calmly walk in as a master. Next thing you know, there will be this stampede.
Yeah.
People rushing to the front and climb over people to get to the front, and then it was all pretty crazy. And I thought, this isn't right. It's a red flag I ignored. But then they brought in the computer selection. So they said, here, folks, it's going to be computer selected. There's no favoritism. And after a year, I started noticing these certain people always near the front. And then I realized, well, people are getting selected here. And then now I realize, well, you can actually groom people by putting people together, who you want where. You can know where people are going to sit, so you can target them. Any comments on that time?
Oh, no, that's a classic example of control. I mean, you talk to anybody that will tell you about how to control a crowd. Jim Jones, he had those key people that would wander in and out of the crowds with the people and tell him stuff. He knew
Harvest
pretty much
information.
what they were thinking, how they were doing, and that's the guys that would hold a gun on people and made, you know, the ones that didn't want to drink the Kool-Aid, they got a gun held on them, and they did.
Yeah.
So, you know, why fight it? So I'm not saying she's going to make everybody drink the Kool-Aid. I'm just saying that I saw a group of people that would have. So it was scary to me. So, you know, and I don't think she wants to kill anybody. I don't think she wants to have them all go out and suicide. You know.
Do you think Jay-Z understands that, for instance, let's say she came to her senses and her conscience and said publicly, folks, I did this, it was a mistake, you know, I'm sorry, I made it all up, I would just, you know, I want to make amends. Does she realise that there's still going to be people there that are going to disbelieve that? They're going to just still run with the Ramtha belief system?
Oh, yeah.
Do you think she realises just how much this gets into people's heads? Does she understand that, do you think?
You know, I don't know. I don't know whether she thinks about that part of it at all.
Yeah, that equation is not important.
Yeah, I just can't even see her thinking that way.
Yeah, maybe I just have a spark of hope that she'll see that. So, again, thank you so much.
Right. I would like to say something about our first tape. The words cult and drink the Kool-Aid were in there because those were my own personal thoughts, and they weren't edited out. So anybody that was offended by that might have hit close to home for you. I don't know. So, you know, but it's done. It's in the past now.
Right.
So,
and last words to anything
that I can
like
think of. But I'm sure I'll get more letters and more questions on this, you know, and hopefully that people will see that my stories are hit true. I hope.
Glenn, the biggest criticism or doubt about the truth of what you're saying is people say, Well, Glen admitted himself that he makes up stories. So why would we believe him about what took place when he was working there as a bodyguard?
The stories I made up were, I told you, the people that I thought were on the ragged edge of depression. Those are the only stories I made up. I didn't make up anything else. It was only to help those people out that I thought were so depressed and so down that they were, like I said, on the ragged edge of deep depression. So I thought I was helping them.
Right, and you also knew that Jay-Z sent one of her spies out, that fellow that took you for dinner, and you just took him for a ride with your story.
Oh, yeah. I had lobster and, I don't know, 3 bottles of wine that night and told all kinds of good stories, and that's how the story of me threatening to kill Jay-Z came about.
Right.
And those people were just, I was so blatant, and I was having fun with it. And then I see Vicky Katie in the store 2 days later, and I walk up to her, and I go, "Vicky, I know that you," and she looked up at me and screamed, threw her arms up near and screamed, and ran towards the back of the store, scared to death of me. And I went, I kind of laughed so hard. But it was no talking to her because she was just frantic. It was really funny. So I felt, and then later on, that's when the Glen Cunningham event where I was going to threaten to kill her came out. And if you guys listen to the tapes, there was never anything like that on there. Never did I ever. In fact, I was concerned for her safety.
Well, Glen, that's it. We're done, and
Okay.
thank you again so much. And
You bet.
Yeah, thanks, Glen.
I don't know if I can answer and clear up some things for people.
Yeah.
So all we can do is hope.